Okay, so these are my tips for conducting your first parent survey. If you have never done this before, or even if you have already done a parent survey or a survey of some kind, hopefully you'll find some good tips in here on the sorts of things that I've learned in the variety of different surveys that I've done. So some of my tips on how to get started. First is that you are going to want to come up with somewhere between 10 and 20 questions. I know that on SurveyMonkey you can actually do a free survey in SurveyMonkey with 10 questions or less. So if you want to do it for free, you will need to come up with no more than 10 questions. You definitely don't want to go over 20 questions. That starts to get too long. You may think to yourself, well, I don't even have 20 questions. In terms of coming up with questions, I would again brainstorm your own, but then ask other departments in your organization to brainstorm questions for you. You may have some overlap. That's what we did with the most current survey that I'm doing is Bill and I both sort of brainstormed our own questions. I put them all together, combined those that were sort of duplicates, and then whittled it down from there to my top 20 questions that I wanted to ask. So I think we came up with somewhere around 65 questions between the two of us, and I whittled that down to my top 20. When you have finally selected your questions and written out all your multiple choice answer options and all that kind of stuff, you want to go back through that list. And what I do is just sort of mentally read through every possible option, and I keep track of the time. How long does it take me to read every question, read every response, and think about how I would answer that question? And I want to make sure that a respondent could potentially finish my survey in less than 5 minutes, because I want to be able to post that when I advertise or promote my survey. I want to be able to say you'll be able to answer this in less than 5 minutes. So that's important to me, and that's not including if they end up typing something for the open-ended questions. I'm talking about just going through the multiple choice questions. It would take them 5 minutes or less. The next point is to word questions neutrally. What I mean by that is you're not leading the person responding to answer in a particular way. So exactly how did you word the question? What different kinds of multiple choice responses did you give them? The next thing is to make sure that there is a valid response for every different segment of your audience. And what I mean by this is that you really have to think about who are all the different kinds of people that may end up answering your survey. And they may not be exactly the people that you are targeting. And so you need to make sure that even if this person, let's say, for example, somehow or other you have somebody filling out your survey whose child has only gone to your camp one time, and somehow this question has to do with more than one time, and this person, like, they literally don't fall in that category, and so none of the multiple choice answers that you've provided to them is something that they could choose for themselves. I don't know if I'm making a good example, but this did happen to me once in one of the surveys that I did a couple of years ago, and somebody, thankfully, it was a friend of mine who responded to me and said, you know, I got to this particular question and there was no valid answer for my particular situation. So he was suggesting, you know, people would basically jump off the survey if there was a point where they felt like they couldn't answer the question. Fortunately, it was early enough in my survey that I could hop on SurveyMonkey and quickly change that question so that there was a multiple choice, a response that was valid for anybody. I think I added something like this, you know, this doesn't apply to me or whatever, just to have something that that person can select. The reason it was okay was because it was very, very early in my survey, and it did not have very many people having had responded yet, and so it was, you know, I could still do it. But if you already had 100 people responding and all those people did not have that possible answer, it could either invalidate that question or it could skew your results, and so thinking about that in advance and making sure that there's a valid response for every different segment is really important. Have someone else check your questions for neutrality and that your multiple choice options make sense. So it's really, really good to have some third-party person review your questions, and that could even be, you know, a parent or even a couple of your really good customers, and say, hey, could you do me a favor and fill out this survey, just give me some feedback. The types of questions you could ask, and I'm going to add one at the top of this, which would be, you could at the very beginning of your survey ask a question that would qualify this person to be the right kind of individual to answer your survey. So for example, like the first question, and I'm going to paraphrase, I don't remember exactly how I worded it, but it was, are you a parent of a child that's of the age to go to summer camp? So I probably didn't word it exactly like that, but it was basically to qualify or disqualify somebody from going through my survey. Now with the paid version of SurveyMonkey, which is what I use, they have sort of, I don't remember what they call the feature, but it's like a forking kind of a feature where if somebody answers no to a certain question, it can take a different branch of your survey, and maybe you ask another question or an entire branch of different questions. But in mine, I basically, once I asked that question, I branched them off. I asked them maybe one more question, and then I thanked them and let them off the survey. In other words, they were sort of somebody I didn't necessarily want that person to finish the survey. And then everybody else flows on from that. So anyway, it's a good way to, right at the front, kind of qualify a person to fill out your questionnaire. So some of the questions you might ask: what do they like or not like about the camps that they've attended? What kinds of things are important to them? And boy, there's just a ton of different questions you could ask in that kind of vein. Get their opinion on things that you're thinking about changing. So whatever it might be, if you're thinking of increasing your price, maybe there's changes you want to make to maybe the way you do extended care, and get their opinion on that. So lots of different ways that you can get their opinion about. I said here perhaps including some questions for the kids. Something I'm going to be doing this year is a kids survey where I actually am going to ask the parents to have their child fill out the survey, and we'll see how that works, but it would be interesting to get the kids' direct feedback. Would be great. Make sure you have a variety of different styles. I don't use a yes/no very often, although I do, like I said, at the beginning of a survey, maybe do that qualifying question as a yes/no. Definitely make sure you've got a difference between required questions and optional. Required is obviously those things that those are your burning questions. You really need to know the answers to those questions. The optional allows somebody to say the question is too complex or the question is too probing. You know, if you're going to ask any questions about their household finances or whatever, you're going to want to make sure that's like an optional question. And once again, those would be the kinds of things that might cause somebody to quit your survey before they're done. Also, asking some open-ended questions. Those are really, really great. I want to caution you to be careful about not doing too many of those for a couple of reasons. One is that they can end up causing that person to take far too long to answer your questionnaire and increase the likelihood that they'll quit early. And then the other thing is it's very hard with an open-ended question to do anything statistically interesting with it. It's great information. It's fun to get their really honest opinion in words. However, you can't really analyze that information. And I tend to push those open-ended questions more towards the end of my survey. That way, if it causes somebody to, somebody's like, well, I've already spent too much time doing this, I'm just not going to answer the open-ended questions. And that's fine. I'd rather someone do that and just not answer the open-ended than have them answer the open-ended early on and then get frustrated with the amount of time they've spent and then, quit before they're done. Pick a tool. I use SurveyMonkey. I have used other survey tools in the past. I'm happy with SurveyMonkey, and I think that they have. I purchased the upgraded, which has gone up. It used to be $28 a month. It's now up to $37 a month. But I just do it for maybe a month or 2 months, depending on how many surveys I'm running and how long I want to keep them open. Once I close the survey, I then go in and capture all the different kinds of reports, because when you've paid, you pay for the upgrade, you get a variety of different ways that you can I'll say, slice and dice the data. And so accessing all of that before you cancel your paid subscription. I just go in and I pull all kinds of reports and save them to my computer, so that hopefully for the most part any kind of information that I would want to be able to analyze or go back to, I've got it saved on my computer, and then I can cancel my subscription. Oh, and I put down here at the very bottom, my best tip: don't use page breaks. This comes from an experiment that I did, or actually it was just, I was conducting a survey and I was discovering that people were, leaving my survey before they finished all the questions. And I started really paying attention to what was happening there. And what I discovered was people were leaving on a page break. I don't know if it was because they didn't realize there was a next button, or if they just were getting frustrated or whatever. But what I found, I took out all of the page breaks, absolutely every page break. I just had the whole thing flow from top to bottom, and it was 20 questions, and it did take them at least 5 minutes, well, probably right around 5 minutes. And then once I changed that, took all the page breaks out, I probably had maybe 1 or 2 that flew off after that. Most everybody, once I took the page breaks out, everybody finished the survey. So that was like a really important thing to realize. So back to picking out your questions, something that I would recommend is to be careful to think about how you would use the answer to that question to help you with your business. So like I said, Bill and I brainstormed together. We had 65 different questions, and I whittled that down to my top 20. The reason that it was actually relatively easy to do that is, like, every one of those questions I said, okay, what would the answers to this question, how would that impact my business? Would I change something about what I'm doing based on how that question is answered? And a lot of them may be, no, it wouldn't change your business, and there's nothing statistically interesting necessarily about that question. It might be an interesting question, but statistically not very impactful to you. So what you might do with some of those questions is turn those into little poll questions on your Facebook page or in your Facebook group. That would be a great way to use some of those that are just sort of more interesting than they are necessary for your business decisions. Another tip or thought would be to try writing a report on your results. So, and it wouldn't even have to be a formal, written in paragraph form kind of report. It could just be trying to put together some charts and information about what you've discovered. Maybe even just verbally telling somebody. A couple people come into your office and do a small little presentation on what it was that you found. Even just doing that kind of thing will point out to you some either places where maybe the multiple choice options weren't as thorough as they could have been, or maybe the way you asked the question was worded in a certain way that if you worded it slightly differently, it would give you better information. And so that has happened to me multiple times, where in writing the report, I realized that, I didn't ask this question quite that great. It helps me to keep notes on that sort of thing so that next year I can improve upon the survey that I did last year. So those are my tips for conducting a survey, and I hope you enjoyed it. I tell you what, you will really, really, really love to get the responses and learn some new and different things about your business.
Okay, so what's coming up next with Camps Rock? Right now Bill and I have been working for the last couple of months on putting together all kinds of new finishing touches, new features, fixing up a few bugaboos, some little things in the actual website. So we're making some really cool changes. We've got some new features for the parents. We will have some new features for you. We're also adding some awesome new stuff for those camps that are upgraded. Again, there will always be your free listings. You can always do that, but we do have some new really cool stuff for those camps that are upgraded. I think you'll really like them. We're sort of giving a facelift to all of that. It'll look a lot more modern, very similar to what things look like in, say, LinkedIn or Facebook, that kind of a look and feel to your listings. So really excited about how things will look to the parents. I will continue to be sending you my mini reports. I'm working again on the same thing you are, retention, and working on reaching out to parents who've used Camps Rock and making sure that they keep remembering to share our information with their friends and all of that good stuff. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this, the mini workshop on retention. I just think it is so critical to really turn your parents and your families into your raving fans. I guarantee you it will work. It can be done. So yeah, we're very excited about this coming year. I think it's going to be really good. And so bigger and better than ever, bigger and better website, more and more users, customers, parents coming on this website, more camps. Having more camps brings more parents, and we will stay in touch. Bye.